Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. I am Lillian Agbayegbe, your host on this program, and I'm excited to welcome you to another episode. You know, we've left our homeland and we're all over the world. You've been listening to me on the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA, and I have been having my guests in the United States. But guess what? The diaspora is not only the United States, we are all over the world. And so today I am excited to welcome my first non-American diasporan to this dialogue series. Lookman Sanusi, you are welcome to Diaspora Dialogue series with LA.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Lookman and I go a long way. And I knew him in the thriving Nigerian theater arts community. Lookman, how did you get into that community in the first place? What was it like? Where were you born growing up in Nigeria? And how did you end up in the theater world?
Wow, that is like 10 questions in one, but I'll start from the first question, which is how did I get into the theater? That's way back. I mean, usually people will tell you, oh, I started acting right from my mother's womb and all of that. I mean, it's none of that. I mean, even though it started off in primary school, but mine goes way back before, primary education, because I come from a tradition where we have to go to an Arabic school before we enroll into the formal, Western school. So in my Arabic school, we call it Ilekeu, right? Back in those days, we usually have Lailatul Qadri, which means the Night of Majesty, during fasting, and we present plays just to mark the Night of Majesty. So as I recall, my very first play was in the 70s, way back in Ilekeu, and later on when I got into university, I realized that the first play that I took part in was called Every Man, that classic anonymous play, Every Man. And I played the servant, and I tell you something funny, because I so much loved it. I didn't want to go home when it was time for us to go and break our fast and then come back for the performance. I was afraid that before I came back, they would have, performed and all that. They said, no, just go break your fast and all that. But that was way back before before Western education. And then in primary school, I also belonged to the cultural society, the come on, very early, come and watch it. So I remember that, taking part in, that's in my primary school. I'm talking about in the 70s. But professionally, I joined the theater in 1984 with a theater company called Anansa Playhouse. Back in the 80s, we had playhouses where you can be a member of. But today in Nigeria, they have a lot of dance companies, back then, and I'm sure you can relate to that. Mm-hmm. I belong to Anansa Playhouse, which was started by late Basi Effiong.
Yeah.
And the Playhouse produced people like Richard Mufedamijo, Segun Arinze, and the hosts of Superstar that you, Mike, and the hosts of others that you have today in Nollywood. So yes, as a professional, so this makes my 40 years in the theater, so I've always been drawn to theater and performance right from my, early days. So that's how I got into theater, and I've been a thespian ever since.
So great. I mean, I remember I used to walk from my house and to the theater to go and see all those playhouses, shows, and things like that. I was so in love with the theater that. So you're doing all this wonderful work, performing, Anansa Playhouse give back to so many things, and there were all of the people, Uncle Fred, Uncle Ben Tamaloki.
Yeah, Uncle Fred, yes.
So how did you go from doing this passion that you had since you were a child, and then you ended up in England? What happened? Did you always plan to leave Nigeria? How did that transition happen?
Funny enough, I never had that urge to leave Nigeria. And back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, where some artists were very desperate, they wanted to leave Nigeria, as a result of maybe they are part of a troupe who travel out and then they will just stay. It never occurred to me, even when I had the opportunity to, because then I belonged to Troupe Africana, which was a dance troupe, and we had invitation to come, I think, to the US and all that. I mean, I wasn't so keen. But for me, because I'm also a literary person, I write as a journalist, as a writer and all that, I was a consultant to British Council back in Lagos. I handle most of their programs and stuff. So they came to me one day and said, look, how would you like to go for a workshop in the UK? I said, hey, why not? I'm game. Have you got a passport? I said, yes. So I gave them my passport, and within 3 days, I was ready to travel. I never planned it. My visa was gratis and all that. So I came. But then I went back. Later, I discovered that there is a program called Highly Skilled Migrant Program, which is for professionals, and you had to be qualified, And I thought, okay. I mean, I said to myself one day after I'd been to England and back, I said, look, I'd like to go to a place where everything works, where there is light, constant electricity and all of that. So I saw this program, I just applied, and lo and behold, I mean, I qualified because as a professional, the earning and all that. So I qualified and I moved to England. This was 2002, 2003 for the program. And I've been in England ever since. So yeah, it wasn't as an act of desperation or jackpot or whatnot. No.
Or check out. You weren't checking out.
Oh, check out. Yeah.
Like packing your bags and running. It was just this opportunity came and you were skilled and you came. So you've been there for 2001 to quite a long. Now, what would you say are the blessings of the new land? There's some things, I know you said you wanted to go somewhere where everything works, but in addition to everything working, what would you say? Yeah, there's some concrete things that you can say the blessings of the new land. There's some things that, you probably wouldn't have done if you had remained in Nigeria and you've been able to do from being in the new land.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. First of all, the opportunity to bring my family over as a result of the program, I mean, you are entitled to bring your entire family to the UK. So it gave us some sort of stability in terms of education. I didn't have to pay for school fees, and there was no strike or whatsoever. That's one stability. Of course, constant electricity, and there's a lot of security. That's another concrete achievement. But in terms of opportunities and all of that, UK is a different kettle of fish. Yeah, you come in as a highly skilled person, but then, I mean, it almost became like, I don't want to say a sham, in the sense that there is no job waiting for you. I mean, so you are a professional, then you come in, there are so many other people. But my profession, as you know, is media and theater. But then you cannot be struggling with the people who are already there on ground, who've got education and all that. I wouldn't say there is language barrier because we speak in English in Nigeria, but then there is a cultural barrier. And if you understand what I mean, because they have a way of doing their stuff, they have the way of relating, to you. I speak in my very heavy Yoruba accent. And then by the time you say, oh, how are you, Jack? How can I come and say, excuse me? By the time they say, excuse me twice and you don't get it, they move on to the next person. So that became a barrier. In terms of opportunity, I worked in the theater when I got in there. I didn't even work as a thespian because I wanted to learn the new environment and then learn how things work there, So, I mean, I got a job as a facilitator, for young people's theater, just to learn the rope. I'd been doing that in Nigeria before moving over to the UK. So it became very tough. Not until 2011 when I started off my theater company called Heavyweight Media. And then with that, I was able to fill a vacuum. I was able to take on African materials on London stages. I started with Our Husband Has Gone Mad Again. And I realized that there was a lot of people who are interested, Africans, who are interested in watching, African plays on London stages. And we ran it for more than 6 months. Wow. Thereafter, I done, people then saw, okay, fine. Oh, this guy is here. We can ask him to do something for us. You know, I had Bolanle Austin Peters came to me to say, okay, can you produce, you know, Waka the Musical for us? And I said, yes. And it was successful, and on and on and on like that. You know, I've always lived in the UK as a theater practitioner and as a media consultant,
Wow.
You know, so which is what has helped. Yeah.
That is so awesome. I'm like, you know, really brilliant and beautiful. So we're talking about, we spoke about the blessings of the new land, and you've said, you know, you sort of touched on it and said, you know, there's no job waiting. But there's some things that were like totally surprising to you. I mean, the whole idea of coming into to new land, as it were, was like to find somewhere where everything works. So aside from people saying, excuse me twice, but there's some things that you were like, what? Is this for real? Are these people real? Did you have any such experience?
As in culture shock, you mean, or?
Yes, as in culture shock, or, you know, yes. I mean, so I'll give you an example. One of my past guests, she was in a meeting and her boss came in and she stood up. She was an intern, and so she stood up for him to sit down because it's like, oh God. And they were like, why did you stand up?
Oh, okay, fine. I've got one. When I was working at the Unicorn Theatre, the artistic director, Tony Anthony, came in and said, oh, would you like to have would you like a cup of tea? Because he was walking down to the green room, as we call it then, to make himself a cup of tea. And I'm like, this is like the boss. This is like the artistic director. And, you know, and I said, sure. You know, and he made me a cup of tea. He asked how many sugar, you know, and I was thinking in terms of cube, you understand? Although I said one, and I mean, which, you know, worked well. So he brought the cup of tea, you know, to me. We would share the same lift. Unlike in Nigeria, I mean, where if a guy wants to enter the lift, you dare not go into the lift, you know, same time as him. Everything was, you know, and of course, I know right from time that, you know, I mean, they call each other by name. It doesn't matter whether you're 50 years or 10 years or whatever, they call you by name and all that. So I saw all of that before coming. But the fact that your boss will go out there, make a cup of tea and bring it to you, cookies and bring it to you, you know, I find very, you know, very interesting and lovely.
I know. Yes. I mean, it's always a pleasant surprise when you find those things. I had that experience as well.
Yeah.
I was working on Staten Island and I had an event and we are going to leaflet at the ferry. And my executive director was going into town and had to pass through the ferry, but she came like 30 minutes earlier so that she could leaflet with me. I'm like, what? But the thing, you know, I found it to be a source of motivation because it just lets you know that the objective is to get the work done. We don't really care who's doing the work as long as the work is moving along.
Yeah.
Now, we have left home, but it isn't like there's nothing to home. But there's some things that you feel very nostalgic about. You're there, yes, you have electricity and the children are going to school. By the way, we're going to talk about the children, but you know, let's talk about nostalgia first. Is there things that you miss like consistently, like, oh my goodness, why isn't this happening here?
Yeah, but this is the thing. For me, I never left. Not very many people knew that I left Nigeria at the time I left because I was always going back.
Okay.
And yes, I was always going back. And when I go back, because I was still very functional in Nigeria, three times a year, you know, and I go there and maybe there is a major event I moderate, for instance, Cora events, or for instance, the British Council, I was still doing, you know, project for them. I never left until I started my radio station called Bubbles FM, and we covered the entire Olympics, London Olympics and all that. And people say, hey, wait a minute, you can't be living in Nigeria and, you know, be covering, definitely you are. Then that exposed me, but I never left. So in terms of nostalgia and all of that, because I'm always going back, you know, 3 times a year, you know, so I never missed it.
Wow,
you know, so,
that's so good. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, you come in the diaspora and people don't go home until
maybe for 4 or 5 years. No, I've never stayed out of Nigeria except during the pandemic, where I didn't go for 2 years at a stretch, you know, but immediately after the restrictions were lifted, you know, I kept going back and forth, you know. So I mean, I'm like struggling between the two words.
That is, you're so blessed. That's the
Yeah,
so,
thank
so
you.
wonderful. So I
Right.
was going to come back to the kids because you were raised in Nigeria, and then you ended up raising your children in the US.
Yeah,
I mean,
in the
sorry,
UK.
the
Yeah.
UK. Ended up raising your children in the UK. So
Yeah.
how did that work out? Did you see what were some of sort of like challenges or no differences, from you
Yeah.
and them?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to give the entire credit to my wife, your friend, Cecilia, because before
So when he says my friend Cecilia, it's because I went to school with his wife, so I know I'm connected to him or mother.
exactly. Thanks for that clarification. Kudos to her because we have three beautiful daughters. Two of them were born in Nigeria, and the last one was born in the UK. But for the two girls in Nigeria, she's already inculcated in them the discipline, the culture, and all of that, and we are blessed that they accepted the teaching, if you like, or the culture. And so that reflected in their behavior when they got to the UK. They are well behaved, they still are. So they went to school when they're supposed to be, and they're very studious. We're very blessed because my first daughter came out with a first class. She's done her master's and all that. We're blessed. It is not because we know how to, but because we're enjoying the grace of God over them. So we never relax. Before we used to play good cop, bad cop. Cecilia being the bad cop, me being the good cop. But yeah, so we're so blessed, and they never went out of line. I've never had to be very strict with them and stuff. So I'll just say it's a matter of just being blessed, enjoying the God's grace. So my children are still in line.
Awesome. And do they speak the language? Because we sometimes listen.
Well, they do. Well, I tease them a lot about that. They do. They speak in Yoruba, and but especially my last daughter who was born here. She took it upon herself to go on YouTube to learn to speak in Yoruba and stuff. So, but sometimes we don't help the matter because we respond in English, and they say no. But I want to learn your language, so speak to me in your language. I say, okay, no wahala. So.
My daughter was saying to me the other day, she's like, Mom, are you sad? I'm like, I can't speak the language. And then I was like, but the challenge I had with my younger daughter when she was born was I was trying to do too much.
Okay.
I started to sort of teach her Hausa because I can speak some Hausa, and I was like, I wanted to do something that nobody around us can speak. So I started speaking Hausa, but I wasn't consistent, and then there was nobody around her who could. And so by the time I decided, okay, let's just give good old Yoruba a try. And she's just like, Mom, that's a bit too late now. And then the other day she said to me, are you guys are just going to be lost in another generation. So, but the good thing is we have like the Nigerian Center here in Washington, DC. And then I just saw the announcement. There's some programs that are teaching language.
Yeah. Yeah, so even in London as well, I mean, they have Yoruba classes, and they have people who even do it online and stuff, just to encourage children to speak in the different, language and all that. Yeah, so it's a good thing, and I would encourage that. Even though they are also interested, because my wife is from Akwa Ibom, the children are interested in learning that. Sometimes she speaks it to them, and they understand, but they couldn't speak it. They understand, but whereas they speak in Yoruba, and they definitely understand. All of them understand it, so
awesome, great,
which is good.
Yes, that's awesome. So we talked about the blessings of the new land, how things are working, the beauty of the homeland, and there was nothing much for you to miss about the homeland because you go all the time. But let's talk about the benefits of integration. And I think you may have talked about that when you said, when you started to create those plays, that there was a market for it.
Yeah.
What would you say are the benefits of you being in the diaspora? And I want you to look at that in two ways. How the UK benefited from you being in the diaspora, And how does Nigeria benefit from you being in the diaspora?
Okay, so let's start with the first part. How does the UK benefit from me being a diaspora? First of all, because like I told you, there is a vacuum of I discovered that there is a dearth of African plays on London stages. I mean, I haven't lived there for over 22 years now. And then when I experimented with the African play in 2011, we had a full house. And then the sort of reaction that I got after that. I'm not saying I'm the first to do that. Perhaps it is few and far between.
Yeah.
But when I came on with Our Husband Has Gone Mad Again, we had, Lillian, I'm telling you the truth, we had a full house. And then we had to go from theater to theater for 6 months, not at a stretch. Maybe we take 2 months break and then we do it in another theater where advertise is filled up. You know, the kind of reaction I get is, oh, we need more of this. We can, if you can do this. And I say, hey, it costs money, you know. So, and I think that especially in London, I'm not talking about maybe Manchester and the rest of it, because I live in London. They have benefited from that. And then as a result of that, I got other jobs, to be honest. Somebody wanted to do a project on Obasanjo Presidential Library. They wanted sound design for the library. And they came to me as a result of what I'd done. Said, oh, listen, can you do this for us? And I delivered. You know, so I have also benefited from that as much as the people, the Yoruba or the Nigerians in London have benefited from our production, and they are yearning for more. And I've been able to serve them over the years. The recent being Awolowo the Musical that we did in May, we sold out, and it was a good show. Because you know,
what's in the diaspora, and this is our story. And how do we tell our stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're telling our own story, and you know, it's been done by the native of that land. You know, coming up with the play. It's not commissioned by British theater or whatnot. We're telling our own stories, and people are coming out and asking for more. You know, so yeah, so they have benefited in that aspect. You know, and also by way of extension, when I got the Obasanjo Presidential Library project, this was by the whites who said, "Oh, please, we know you're an expert. Can you?" They also benefited. All right. And then also not recently, in 2022, I got a consultant for BBC, Noughts and Crosses. They came to me to, you know, be the coach, the Yoruba coach on the TV series. That project also benefited in terms of, if you're talking about benefit. Now, when we talk about benefit for the homeland, Nigeria, I was able to take the Obasanjo Presidential Library project, you know, to Nigeria to produce the sound. So the artists down there benefited, including our friend, the late Mike Odiachi, and the rest of them, Hioma Kwale, Shegun Arinze, and all of them. Because I was able to convince them to say, listen, if you want the authentic Yoruba, is best I take it down to Nigeria and produce it. And they agree with me. At the end of the day, they were very happy with the result. The President Obasanjo was also very, very happy with the results. You know, so that is taking job back home, produce, and bringing it here. Awesome. It's not as if we cannot get people who can do that here, but I felt that will not be too professional, because their inflection will be affected by the way they speak, and that is not authentic. So that's another way Nigeria has benefited. The arts community benefited from such projects. And again, in some of our plays, we've had to invite people from Nigeria down to London to take part, you know, in some of the projects that have been. So, I mean, more or less, both countries, both homes now, because they're both my homes, are benefiting from the immense talent that God has given me. That's the way I see it.
So it's not like, it's kind of like a win-win situation we have here.
Win-win situation, win-win, you can say that.
Yeah, because people think that, you know, when you go in the diaspora, you're out here at one side benefits, but you can actually be like you going back and forth. you can actually be in both places and be contributing on both platforms. I want to zero in some more on Nigeria. I know one of the reasons he said he left was we're not doing, things are not working like, somewhere where everything works.
Yeah.
What are your dreams for Nigeria? How do you see us getting to that stage now, to where things projecting to, I would say, into the future, or getting to that place where we can make things work better? What do you think you can contribute, or we as diasporans can contribute to that conversation?
I don't know, but let me tell you from my own experience, especially when we're looking at digital switchover, which was my research was on digital switchover. I thought, hey, listen, this is a lot of opportunity, for the creative industry, from media and all that. So I invested a lot of my time and money and all that to build a studio in Lagos, in Lekki, and in the space, I have a 24 beds, I have 2 conference rooms, I have all of that, build and build and build. And I thought, okay, fine, the creative industry will benefit, I will benefit, and all that, we can make it work. But then Nigeria happened to it. All right. So this is very discouraging. If you don't have proper things in place, infrastructure, policy, we have more than enough policy. It's implementing this policy and the Nigerian approach to things, which is a major deterrent, to be honest, because we in the diaspora have big dreams. You want to do something back home. You want everybody to benefit from it, but then you're frustrated by the policies or implementation of policy, and the Nigerian factor, as we call it. You understand? For instance, nothing can really work if you don't have steady electricity supply. Nothing can really work if you don't have good roads. Nothing can never work if you don't have good security. If you don't have, so these are very cogent, and very important ingredients that will entice investors, that will entice us diasporans to go home and do something. Things are still not in place, and I don't know how long or when, and there is no visible no visible, how should I put it?
I think you're saying, there's no sign that,
no sign, thank you, no visible sign to say that things are going to improve, and then you can, recoup your investment. Nothing. And it's so discouraging. And one person cannot do it, or a group of diasporans cannot do it, unless the government takes the initiative, and say, you know what, we're going to, encourage the diasporans to come and say, you know what, no, tax relief for the next 5 years until you stabilize. Mm-hmm. The financial institutions are not helping, because of the fiscal policy, mm-hmm. which is being dictated by IMF and the rest of them. It's not helping.
I'm so glad about how you couch that, because you talked about policies, implementation, security. So you're really talking about systems, because,
system.
It's been this conversation that, sometimes maybe diasporans either have no business talking about how things are working in Nigeria. If you really care, you should come back home. But we don't have to go back home. And the other thing that you said, that this is not an indictment on the people per se. This is saying that there are systems and structures that we need to get in place. So this is not one person is better than the other. It's saying that the systems and the structure that makes things work. So we're able to do the things that we can do out in the new land, because the structures create the enabling environment. And if those systems and structures are in place in the homeland, then we can much, and the people in the homeland can do it. Not that people aren't doing stuff, but that the enabling environment to really do much more is really not there yet.
And we can't talk enough about that, because they really need to be in place. Individuals cannot do that. You know, a group of diasporans cannot do that. It's the government who needs to take the initiative, who needs to take the lead. You know, there are certain things, I mean, the remittance from the diaspora is how much now? They say about $25 billion. You know, that's a lot, you know. Therefore, you should encourage diasporans to say, listen, you guys come home. Anyway, government has to get the security rights, architectural rights. They need to get that right. But beyond the security, do you understand? There is the loan. You know, if you're able to give a single digit loan, give a waiver on taxes, you know, there are certain things you need to do, and then that will encourage the diasporans to come home. But all of these, you know, they are not in place. Instead, they would try and rip you off. They would try and double the taxes. They would try and make life very difficult for you. Meanwhile, you're the one coming home to spend money, you know? So it's difficult and it's frustrating. You know, yeah, I mean, it is frustrating.
Yeah, so we must do better. We are, if you are listening, thank you for listening. I'm Lilian Agwegwe. I'm talking to my best non-US diasporan guest today, Lookman Sanusi, who's based in the United Kingdom, in London. And we've really talked about the blessings of the new land, how coming out and giving us the opportunity to work in a more structured environment. But we really love the home. You did, even though you didn't miss home, and because Lookman straddles both worlds, he's in the UK and he's in Nigeria. But there's some particular things I know you can go, but I wanted to take this one chance to see, is there something though that you're like, it's something from Nigeria that's not in the UK that you can say, you know, maybe they should bring this to the UK?
Well, well, recently, although I'm not a big fan of àgbàdo, but they discovered àgbàdo is corn, you know, roasted corn, and you know, in Nigeria we do that a lot. They discovered an àgbàdo seller somewhere in Peckham. My dear sister, if you see the fight and queue, and the guy was threatening, listen, I'm not going to sell anymore. If you don't organize yourself, I'm not going to sell anymore. You see the yearning. I would love that. You understand? I miss that, you know, to be honest. I mean, I don't eat out. I don't go to Yabuka and the rest of that a lot. But you still miss, you miss all of that. You miss the... Yeah, so I mean,
I said it before, the last time I was in Nigeria. Honestly, I ate suya for 5 days straight. My daughter was like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Please, you don't understand." And somebody was like, "Don't they sell suya abroad?" I'm like, "Yes, they do, but
yeah, but
I mean, when you're buying suya in Nigeria, you don't go to a restaurant to buy suya.
No. It's on the roadside.
Is the trouble? You don't go to the restaurant to buy suya. I'm like, so this one that, you know, they're telling me I can go to Suya Spot or somewhere to go and buy suya. I'm like, no, I want to go to some Allen Junction, to some Obalende place type, you know, to some Bajumo Junction, somebody.
Yes.
I do not want, I want to buy suya from a Malam.
Exactly.
You know, I want to see him. I want to point. I bought suya from Suya Spot. They went and brought the suya, and I didn't even see. I didn't pick the one I wanted. You know, I didn't pick the one I wanted. I didn't say.
And then taste it.
You know, and I don't know what I'm like. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. I also miss my literary circle because as a writer, you know, going out to meet friends, you know, fellow writers every Saturday, every last Saturday of the month, we meet at Anna and all that, and we exchange ideas and stuff and all of that. I miss that. I miss going to Freedom Park where, you know, every night it's like your hangout, your normal hangout where you meet your friends, musicians, and all of that. I miss Abegi, I miss Bokobiri, you know, I miss a lot of those, because in London, just as in the US, everybody works 9 to 5 or they are in one job or the other, and there is no time to socialize or hang out unless maybe we have a play or we have a reading or whatnot, you know. So I miss all of that. So when I go to Lagos, I soak that up. I soak it up a lot, so just to, but I miss that. So if you are talking about, something that I miss regularly, that will be one of it,
Awesome, great. Yes. Well, Lookman, thank you so much for joining me today. And any last thoughts, anything you'd like to share about, the beauty of the homeland, the blessings of the new land, the benefits of us being this bigger world, a bigger society by integrating? Anything you'd like to share before we end the conversation today?
Well, I would say that we should not relent. We should still be hopeful. We should not be discouraged, even though things are not going according to how we want it in our homeland. I believe it's still going to be better, and bigger. So I will continue to contribute my own quota in my own little way to ensure that Nigeria is better. It's a place I would love to visit more often. It is a place where I'd love to continue to contribute, despite the insecurity, despite the lack of infrastructure and all that. But if we all stay off, then nothing is going to grow. If we all left Nigeria, then who's going to be there to, restructure and all of that? So we still need to go back, in as much as when the diaspora, it's not as if, everything is rosy here as well, because it's a slave country. I mean, no apologies, because you have to work to pay your bills and it doesn't stop and it keeps going up and up and up, so we shouldn't give up. We should continue to visit the homeland. We should continue to carry the blessings of this, the diaspora back home and contribute. It will get better. I believe so.
Thank you so much. And we're ending on that positive note. It will get better. We're taking the blessings of the new land and spreading it to our homeland. We are staying connected with our people, knowing that there's no place like home. Recognizing that, the new land is good, but it also has its challenges. So what if we can make our homeland better? And that's what we're doing. My name is Lilian Agbe. This is Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. Excited to bring you varied conversations with members of the diaspora. And we're looking forward to coming back to you another time. Lookman, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. And well done. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. I'll be back with another guest next time. Bye.
Oh,